Hello, this is Jean Gunderson, and I'd like to speak about the South Dakota proposed social studies standards. I'm speaking as a parent of three children who are affected by the standards as they are all in elementary school. And I am also a teacher. I do not currently teach social studies, but I am speaking as a parent and only on behalf of myself. And when I submitted my comment on the social studies standards, which I would encourage each of you to do, I submitted it as a parent. I saw this article today. I read the article, South Dakota Social Studies Hearings Pit Teachers Against Nome. And it hurt my heart to see this be the political aspects of this be the thing that is getting publicized. I certainly, there's a lot going on with these standards, and I'm not saying that we should not talk about everything that's going on, but I'd like folks to take a look at the standards themselves. And I'd really encourage each of you, parent, community member, to look at the standards and then submit a comment for or against and your reasoning behind it. Though there's a quick form. They want to know your email address, who you are, what your role is, and then what your thoughts were on the standards. And then they do have it broken down by grade level. So I hope that everybody will get a chance to do that instead of just thinking like, oh, I support NOM, so I support the standards, or I support teachers, so I'm against the standards. Let's take a look at what the standards say, and then go grade by grade, standard by standard, because I think that lost within the debate has been the complexity of the situation and also what the standards actually say. I have listened to some of yesterday's meeting, and it's 4 hours long. You can find it here. I hear a lot about the content of the standards. I am going to talk about the volume of the standards, and that is what my comment that I submitted was about. So a little background about myself. At home, I do supplement my kids' social studies training with the E.D. Hirsch core knowledge books. So they have these for preschool up through 6th grade. E.D. Hirsch has written several books. I own all of them. And he talks about the fact that over the years, we've kind of gotten to think that younger kids cannot learn about American history and world history, and they can only learn about like their immediate community. So he wants to change that by making sure that everybody has a lot of knowledge about history and geography. So his organization publishes books from kindergarten to 6th grade, and I use the world history and American history portions of those books and the other portions, except I don't use math, but anyway, these are very affordable, and I could just cuddle up with each kid and read from this book. And my kids have really enjoyed it. One kid came back one time from playing with friends and said, I tried to tell my friends that the president's house burned during the War of 1812, but they wouldn't believe me. Another kid recently was trying to kind of break into a friends group, and he's like, they were at the park, and he's a little bit more shy, and he's standing back for a while, and he saw a way to where a kid was kind of standing by himself, and he went up to him and said, do you know about the Revolutionary War? So the kids get really interested in learning about those historical events. So I mentioned that to say that I am not against kids learning about those things, and I'm not against rigor. I believe that kids should have a rigorous education where they learn a lot of things, including a lot about history, geography, etc. What I want to do today is go through the 1st grade standards and show you the standards that are in place now, and then the proposed standards. Here is where you can go to read all of the standards, K to 12, get some coffee. It's going to take you a while, and it's a long document. And then you can submit a public comment here. So on the DOE site. And let's see, I'm going to just grab this document here. The South Dakota Education Association put the standards side by side. So I mentioned the SDA, and I thank them for the work that they did on this. they have a stance against the standards. That doesn't mean that, that you have to be for the standards because they're against it, or vice versa. Or be against them because they're against them, or anything like that. Please read the standards and understand what the kids are being asked to do, and then comment with your thoughts. My comment was simply that I think it's too much in first grade. My middle son, so I was thinking of my middle son when I looked through these first grade standards. He did first grade last year, and I really liked that he got to learn so much. Not just the math and the reading and stuff like that. And there's a lot of reading to learn in first grade, but also science, social studies, and then all of the special classes that they take where they can learn all about the world. And I think that if we have to master all of these, if the kids have to master all of these standards that are in first grade here, plus the kindergarten ones, and then add on the second grade ones later and things like that, some of those experiences that he had would have to be taken away because of the amount of time it would take to master these standards in first grade. That's my opinion. You can completely disagree with me. That's fine. I showed you where you can submit those comments, but I just want everybody to be educated on this. I'm trying to be instructive and constructive, if you will. On the left, it shows what the standards were in 2015. And then the proposed standards are on the right, and I'll just scroll down through those. And then I'm going to read them to you. And then I'll leave you to investigate the rest of the standards and form your opinion and make your comment if you haven't already. So on the left are the standards that we are working with currently in the schools, the standards that my students, my 3 boys, are being educated under. Students will analyze how major events are chronologically connected and evaluate their impact on one another. Demonstrate chronological order using events from their own lives. Describe ways people learn about the past, including but not limited to photos, artifacts, stories, and videos. Students will analyze and evaluate the impact of people, events, ideas, and symbols upon history using multiple sources. Connect people and events honored in commemorative celebrations. Those are the history standards. Civics, students will explain, compare, and contrast and analyze the historical principles and philosophical purposes of various forms of government. Identify primary symbols of the United States. Students will explain the historical impact of primary founding documents, including but not limited to the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Bill of Rights, and subsequent amendments. Explain who makes decisions and rules in the school. Students will explain how the Constitution organizes the government of the United States. Identify services in your local community, including but not limited to police, fire, and ambulance. Geography standards. Students will apply geospatial resources, including data sources and geographic tools, to generate, interpret, and analyze information. Construct simple maps of the classroom. Use maps, globes, and other simple geographic models to identify absolute location. Distinguish between land masses and bodies of water using maps and globes. Students will recognize the characteristics of the processes that shape places and regions. Describe the unifying characteristics and boundaries of different school regions, including but not limited to the playground, classroom, and reading corner. Students will understand the ways in which humans culturally adapt to, use, and modify the natural environment and its various elements. Describe ways in which people modify and adapt to the environment. Economics. Students will apply the fundamental economic ideas and concepts associated with the study of economics. Distinguish between goods and services and how families use them. Describe ways in which people earn money. So that's the standards on the left. That's the complete group of standards from the first grade social studies standards that we have now. Now I'm going to read the proposed standards for first grade that are up for review right now that you can comment on. On the right, first grade, world to 315 in America, world to 315 in America, 1492 to 1787. Building upon skills learned in previous grades, The student learns the skills to complete the following tasks, completing each task with relative ease by the end of first grade. The students can place events in his or her life in the correct chronological order. The student can draw a depiction of a historical event or figure that intentionally reflects a story learned in class. The student can distinguish between a primary source and a secondary source. The student can give examples of virtues and actions related to excellence in character, knowledge, wisdom, and self-government. The student can identify the state flag and motto of South Dakota. The student can identify major public buildings in Washington, D.C. and their architectural styles. The student can identify the South Dakota State Capitol building and name the current governor. The student can recite the following line from the Declaration of Independence from memory. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The student can identify north, south, east, and west on a map and on a globe. The student can locate the North Pole and the South Pole on a map and on a globe. The student can give examples of different ways that a group of people can make decisions. The student can give examples of goods made, gathered, or grown products that people buy, sell, and use. The student can give examples of services, actions that people buy and sell. The student can give examples of a trade-off when working, buying, selling, and saving. The student can recite the preamble to the United States Constitution from memory. The student demonstrates knowledge of American and South Dakota geography. The student locates each of the following on a map: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, Antarctica, Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, Arctic Ocean. The student explains the following geographic features: coast, valley, prairie, desert, Southern Ocean, Mississippi River, Gulf of Mexico, Washington, D.C., Pier, Sioux Falls, Rapid City, Canada, Mexico, Central America, Bay, Harbor, Peninsula, Island. The student demonstrates understanding of the modern way of life by comparing the following in history to prior eras: ability to believe and act on one's beliefs without fear of arrest or worse, ability to speak one's mind without fear of arrest or worse, acquisition of clothing, food, and shelter, communication by internet, text, phones, mail, electricity, plumbing, heating, cooling, travel by plane, car, boat, horse, and buggy, walking. The student demonstrates knowledge of ancient civilizations in Asia, the Middle East, Northern Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean Sea. The student identifies the major cultural features, stories, and contributions of ancient India, Babylon, and ancient China. The student identifies the major cultural features, stories, and contributions of ancient Egypt, including agriculture, hieroglyphic writing, and papyrus. The student explains the major historical events and stories of the ancient Hebrews. The student identifies the major figures and stories within Greek mythology. The student tells the story, I'm sorry, that's a lot. The major figures and stories within Greek mythology. The student tells the story of the Persian Wars, including the battles of Marathon and Thermopylae. The student identifies the major cultural features and contributions of Athens, including pottery, architecture, sculpture, and democracy. The student tells the story of the Peloponnesian War. The student tells the story of the conquest of Alexander of Macedon. The student demonstrates knowledge of the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. The student tells the stories of the founding of Rome and of the Roman Republic. The student identifies the major cultural features and contributions of Rome, including in architecture, engineering, and government. The student tells the story of the Punic Wars. The student tells the story of the Roman civil wars and the triumvirates. The student identifies key Roman emperors and events of the Roman Empire. The student demonstrates knowledge of pre-Columbian indigenous peoples of North America. The student describes the similarities and differences in lifestyle, traditional warfare, and culture between two historical pre-Columbian Native American tribes, one of which is from the Oceti-Sakowee Oyate, including select standards from Oceti-Sakowee Essential Understandings 1 to 5 and 7. Other tribes to consider include, but are not limited to, the Mandan, Arikara, Cheyenne, Crow, and Hidatsa, and I apologize if I mispronounced those. The student demonstrates knowledge of European exploration and settlement of what would become the United States. The student explains the various European motivations for exploration. The student tells the biography of Christopher Columbus, including his theories about a faster western route to Asia and his first voyage. The student explains the Columbian exchange of resources, people, and disease, including how smallpox decimated Native Americans. The student explains how Europeans and indigenous peoples both worked together and also fought against each other and among themselves. The student explains the history of slavery, including in ancient times and in the 15th century. The student explains why slavery is morally evil. The student tells the story of the founding of Jamestown, including the stories of John Smith, Pocahontas, and John Rolfe, the starving time, the cultivation of tobacco, the arrival of Africans from a Dutch slave ship captured by the English. The student tells the story of the founding of Plymouth and Massachusetts Bay, including the stories of William Bradford and John Winthrop, the backgrounds and motivations of the Mayflower passengers, the Mayflower Compact, the assistance of the Wampanoag, the first Thanksgiving, the meaning of John Winthrop's City Upon a Hill. The student explains why rules and laws are important for ensuring that people live freely and in peace. Those are first grade standards. So everything that I just read on the right side here is expected to be taught to first graders who are supposed to know this when they exit first grade. And that's in addition to what they've learned in kindergarten. And then that will be added on to in second grade. Most of those standards, I don't have a problem with the content, but the volume, I believe, is too much for first graders to master, in my opinion. I think that time would have to be taken away from other subjects during the day, and I'm not sure what it would be taken away from. I hope not reading, because reading is a very intense subject in first grade. We basically learn I'm a reading teacher, we basically learn all of our single syllable spelling patterns, phonics patterns. And I wouldn't want it to be taken away from anything else either. It also is not going to be possible for in this grade to combine the reading and social studies standards, because there's not first grade text about the Battle of Thermopylae and things like that. So that is my concern. You can absolutely disagree with what I've said, but please do look at these standards and decide for yourself, instead of just relying on what we're hearing from the news outlets and stuff like that. You can find the standards here on the DOE page, and then you just click on this link and it'll take you to a little form there where you could submit public comments, and you can talk about whether you think these should be the standards that are adopted in K-12 for South Dakota's young people. Again, this is located here at the DOE site, Content Standards, Social Studies Review. If you just click in, just search Social Studies Proposed, South Dakota Proposed Social Studies Standards, it'll come up to this. Thank you for your time.